Welcome back into Bear and Balance. This is day 3 of our little mini recaps. I'm Jeff Berckes, and I'm joined by lead draft analyst Jacob Infante. No longer at the draft in Green Bay. Looks like he is back at a place of residence and not out near porta potties. But how was your experience, Jacob? Quickly before we get into the pick.
Yeah, so I mean, it was good. It was cool to actually be at the NFL draft. That's something I've wanted to do for quite some time, obviously. So to be able to watch the picks come in live, to be able to experience all the different fandoms coming together and everybody just spending time together and coming together and watching their favorite teams make their picks was a lot of fun. And obviously getting to see the Bears make their selections, in real time was pretty sweet as well.
Yep, I did the draft the last 2 years live, with some media credentials. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Got to be there in the interview room for both Roma Dunze and for Caleb Williams. So it's a really cool experience, and it is really neat to see all the fans out and everybody's happy, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's good-natured ribbing. It's not like when people go to a game and you see people get kind of fueled up and fired up, and it's all in like good fun. I think it's a really great event, and people that criticize it haven't been yet. Let me just put it that way, because
Absolutely.
it's just good natured fun. So let's get into this pick. Pick 132. The Bears traded out of their original 4th round pick to pick up an additional selection with the Buffalo Bills. So the Bears and Bills just like going back and forth with that 4th round pick. Kind of insane. Bears take a little bit of a surprise here, a late draft riser in Ruben Hyppolite II. He's a linebacker out of Maryland. Not a lot of information out there on him, but I assume that you know a little bit about Hyppolite. What can you tell me?
Yeah, so I'll admit I didn't expect him to go this high, and with him being at least projected a later round sort of pick, I don't have a ton on him. I have something, so I can work off of that. Just to clarify, so I think it's a pretty big reach, but I'm not going to get worked up over a late 4th round pick, especially a guy with elite athleticism. So for those who don't know, I mean, Ruben Hyppolite started 46 career games over his 5 years at Maryland, ran a 4.42 40-yard dash. And that shows on tape with what I've been able to see from him, the closing speed, the range that he has, the high motor he plays with. And he's a densely built guy at 236 pounds. I mean, he's shorter, doesn't have elite length necessarily, but he's stocky and he's explosive. And I think that gives you something to work with, especially for a backup linebacker. I mean, and one who was a team captain at Maryland. There are tools there for sure. And look, am I going to say, oh, he was my top rated player on my board? Definitely not. Was he my top ranked linebacker on my board? No. Was he my top ranked Maryland player on my board? Probably not. I'd have to go back and check. But I mean, I understand why Hyppolite got picked pretty high, just because of the upside and the intangibles there are to work with physically and mentally as well.
Yeah, I mean, it head scratcher moments, it just feels like you're maybe a couple rounds early. It's the type of guy that you're taking a flyer on in the 6th or the 7th, but you don't know what's happening in these draft rooms and, how they see the roster. It's a new coaching regime. So, if Dennis Allen comes in, it's like, I don't have enough speed on this defense, or I need somebody who can, I think I can mold into, a starter or whatever, because I don't like the backups. And, I don't know what they think of Noah Sewell, right? Like, I don't know what they think of the depth at linebacker here. It does feel a little incongruous from what was out there and the other needs that we believe that the Bears think that they need to fill on this team, particularly running back. But again, we'll get into that later. But where do you think this fits in terms of the depth chart on the Bears at linebacker? Like, what are we looking for here? The 4th round pick is going to make the squad, right? I mean, unless something goes terribly wrong, 4th round pick is going to make the squad. So how does that stack up here on the depth chart in your opinion?
Yeah, so I'm looking at it as he's someone who's probably going to compete for that linebacker 3 spot. I mean, obviously a very different player from Jack Sanborn, who's a bit, he's bigger, he's more physical, not necessarily the athlete that Hyppolite is. I anticipate that Hyppolite's probably going to be a will linebacker just because of his athleticism. And, a part of that too is just, a lack of significant physicality. And I think the size plays into that as well, where he can get bullied a little bit, at the point of attack. I think he's going to be in that mix where, you bring up Noah Sewell, Amen Ogbongbemiga is going to be in the mix there as well, competing to be that other linebacker in, the base packages that you have in the 4-3 defense. I don't think Hyppolite's going to win that job. I think between Ogbongbemiga's experience and Sewell's physicality, I think they might be better fits as, that Sam linebacker, so to speak. But I think Hyppolite will be the primary weak side will backup linebacker. So yeah, I think this is primarily a special teams move. Maybe they see potential for him to work with, but yeah, I think this is probably more like he's a linebacker 4, linebacker 5. That's a guy who's going to make the 53-man roster, but I don't know for sure if he's going to be consistently seeing playing time on defense early on.
It's one of those things where I defended the Torrey Taylor pick last year, because as a special teamer and the shape of the draft last year it was a very shallow draft. A lot of people talked about how the 4th round in last year's draft was really more like the 6th round draft, in a normal draft. And so, yeah, that makes sense. That's what you're doing. You're drafting special teamers. I haven't heard that same construction of the draft this year, put that way. Particularly it was like it's a really, only a couple blue chip players. The value of the draft seems to be, late 1, early 2, right? And so, what's the shape of this draft look like once we're now in day 3? Like, is it mostly project? Is it drafting mostly traits? What are we looking for here when we're talking about these next few picks on day 3?
Yeah, honestly, I'm drafting pretty heavy on traits. I think the things I'm looking for is athleticism and motor. So, honestly, both of those things do show up with Hyppolite. So I think that's something where if you have the speed and you have the speed or the agility, depending on the position, whichever is more important, and you have the want to get to the ball, to make plays, to block, to finish off a block, something like that, then I think that gives you potential to work with, at the very least on special teams. If you have a guy who's, you can have someone who's plotting a little bit, they play hard, but if they don't have the athleticism, then, there's a pretty capped ceiling there. You can have someone who's extremely fast, but if they don't play with a very high playing speed, if they don't necessarily know what they're doing out there, then it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. I think, so having said that, I understand taking, using a day 3 pick on Hyppolite for sure. Again, is this a little bit earlier than I would have done it? Yes. But again, it's a late 4th round pick. Historically, those guys are special teamers. You'll get a diamond in the rough every once in a while here and there, but that's probably what you're going to be looking at here. That's what I expect Hyppolite's going to be. But yeah, the 2 tools I mentioned, the athleticism and the motor, both definitely there with Hyppolite. So from that perspective alone, I definitely see it.
Well, let me close that out by just kind of wrapping that philosophical question back to you, which is you get to this point in the draft and there's no perfect players left. Like
No.
those guys are gone early, right? And so now, and like the giant ceiling guys are gone, by and large, right? So now you're working with that question of this guy wasn't particularly productive, but he has a trait that I think is really important for this position. And so I'm going to see if our coaching staff can get that out of him versus, man, this guy is a good football player. I just don't know if he's athletic enough to make that work at the next level, but we're going to take him and see if his field intelligence and everything can translate over into somebody that can be at least a good practice squad guy, and maybe into maybe that athleticism can improve, right? But generally, it's one of those 2 things at this point. Really good college player, productive, but maybe not the most athletic guy, and a really athletic guy, but that production hasn't matched that. So from a philosophical standpoint, are you seeing a preference here? And what's your preference when you get into that?
Yeah, so I think it definitely depends too on the extent of how good they are on tape, because I mean, I'm looking here. I was really pounding the table for Braden Swinson to be in consideration for this pick, let alone, the remaining two that the Bears are going to have in round 5. But at the same time, I think that his tape was really good, even though he didn't have elite athleticism. You can have solid tape and not have elite athleticism, and that'll push you farther down the board. But I think that if you have legitimately good tape, then that's something where, all right, we can make an exception for you, even if you're not a super athlete. So, I mean, it varies on a case by case basis. I know that's kind of a cop out answer, but I think if you take this opportunity, like 4th round, 5th round, you have this chance to bet on elite trait athletes. Maybe for one reason or another, they didn't have as much production as you would have liked in college. I think in Hyppolite's case, it's, lack of physicality. He's a little bit shorter. Deconstructing blocks can make it a little bit tougher for him to make plays in between the tackles, but he's got good range as a tackler. He can make plays outside of the tackles, sideline to sideline type of guy. Definitely a traits pick, in my opinion. And that's not to say, he's got bad instincts. I think, he started, 46 games in college. Like, he's pretty smart. I mean, and obviously for him to be playing as hard as he does, he needs to be able to process pretty quickly. So, yeah, I know I rambled a little bit there, but I think Hyppolite is a clear traits pick. I think that, maybe the tape was decent. I wouldn't say it was necessarily, elite by any means. And again, this is someone I've watched not nearly as much on as I have with the Bears' other picks to this point. And I'm sure that, probably the 5th round picks that they make, I'll probably have more on those guys than I do on Hyppolite. Knock on wood. We'll see.
I don't know. Ryan Poles might say, hold my beer, We'll
yeah.
see.
Yeah, he might. I'm convinced at this point, this pick was solely to challenge me, to be like, surely Jacob doesn't have anything on this guy. And I barely do. So this is, it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this draft plays out.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. Sounds like a traitsy pick. The guy's going to compete. I do think that the linebacker room did need to add some talent, and so this was something that wasn't necessarily talked about a lot, but I think it is something that they needed to add at least one more athlete here. And again, you got a new defensive coordinator. He may be looking for something a little different than what's on the roster, so it'll be interesting to see how Hyppolite competes and see if he can get on the field and special teams early. So, all right, Jacob, thanks for the time. We'll be back probably a couple more times today. So stick with us and we'll keep grinding this out.